I want to talk today about this theme we have for this month of expectancy. And as I was talking about it with my friend Rand back there, who's handling the cameras, I remembered that this is September 11th. And I didn't want to be with you without acknowledging that somehow and honoring the people we lost in that and the great heroism that occurred and the amazing stories that, well, we lost thousands, the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands of people who came together at that event is certainly worth honoring. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that, but at the same time I want to acknowledge that that's an event that has touched all of us. That's a loss, that's a tragedy that has touched all of us and has triggered a healing, and by all healing, a growth in consciousness for all of us. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then I remembered where I was on that day. And sometimes it's hard to tell this story, but I want to share it with you because I was on another long bike ride. This one was along the Danube River in Europe. And I just arrived with a few of my family members and friends. I just arrived in Vienna. And we checked into our rooms, and my sister once we checked in, my sister banged on the wall and said, "Turn on the television." She knows I hate television, so I turned it on and I thought I was watching a movie, which was actually the event happening. We were stunned, like we all were. We were stunned. We went out into the street, walking through Vienna, and the most amazing thing happened. People that we had no idea who they were, complete strangers, Austrians, came up to us. And somehow they could tell we were Americans because there were people lined up and crowds of people that came to us. And said, "We're so sorry for your loss." It was an amazing expression of community, of our oneness, that I had no expectation of. Very moving. And we all have those recollections of where we were and how we were so deeply touched. And I just want to honor that within each one of us, honor that within our community, our country, our world, because as I found out, it was not just American. It was around the world. There was a coming together. And one of the things that we encounter in those kinds of losses is often that feeling of powerlessness. And we sometimes make the mistake of believing, well, because I feel powerless, I must be powerless. And that's a misinterpretation of that particular emotion. Because we are beings of God. We are individualized portions of God, each one of us. We have access to unlimited power. But often when I'm in the middle of feeling powerless, like after a loss like that, I forget how I can use that unlimited power that's available to me. And there's this wonderful story that's out of a Jane Roberts books, who writes a lot about this wisdom from an entity called Seth. And he talks about one of the ways of using our dream time, using our dreaming. And he said, imagine a time when countries are wanting to go to war, instead of actually engaging in arming and all that stuff, and missiles and all that stuff, that what we do collectively is we dream the war. So we have a national dream night, and we dream the war. And when we wake up, whoever we dreamed was the victor, well, we give them the spoils of war. But not a person died. No one was injured. And we settled the matter in the dream state. Now there's an example of our power. And I think just applying that notion, around this whole trauma and this whole conflict that gave birth to 9/11, we could be imagining in our dreams resolutions to that include every individual, that include every religion, every point of view. And we grow from it, and we resolve conflict with it. And the point is, can I let myself imagine that it's possible? Now, I know bringing this up, I can see everyone has touched a place of pain within them. So what I'd like to do for the moment is just respect that. And if we could go within, close our eyes, and I want to do just a brief healing meditation with that discomfort that we associate with that tragedy. So if you would just close your eyes and take a deep breath in and fill your lungs all the way. And then gently let that breath go. And as your lungs empty, once again, a full deep inhale. And then release that breath. And another one, another full deep in breath. Relax that. And as you breathe in a third time, let that incoming breath touch that place within your body. Touch that location. Let that incoming breath just touch that, as though it were white light being directed by your own act of breathing. And let yourself feel that discomfort, that loss. Just experience the sensation. It's not about asking you to suffer. It's about asking you to focus your consciousness in that spot, in that location. Touch that with your breath. And as you breathe into it, you may wish to give it a color. I like to use a vibrant, radiant emerald green. You may like a vibrant white light, or a sunset pink, or whatever color, a beautiful golden ray, whatever color comes to your consciousness, you may wish to direct that color and fill that spot, that location, as you breathe into it. Fill it with that color. And as you see that place glowing in the color you've chosen, just ask that place within to dedicate, to direct all the energy there of hurt, of discomfort. Direct all the energy within that discomfort to your intent that all of humankind grow to respect the sacredness of every individual. That all of humankind grow to respect the eternal spirit within each one of us. Unique, eternal, and beautiful. And you can trust. Putting your consciousness there is enough. Putting your consciousness there is a powerful creative act. When we do it together, we magnify that vibration of creation and send it out into the world. It touches all of reality. And then if you would just gently connect with your breathing again and feel a sense of peace within you. When you're ready, you can return to the room and open your eyes. Thank you. And I'm going to move on into this thing that we're really talking about, which is that wonderful power of expectancy. You know that you could also call it the use of the imagination, because that's what expectancy is. It's about casting our consciousness into the future. Einstein said it's the most powerful act in the universe, the most powerful force in the universe. Imagination. Where do we project our consciousness? The most powerful force in the universe. This guy knew something about power too. Expectation. It becomes the framework that we build, which energy or spirit uses to create form, to create the present moment, to create the physical world. Expectation is the framework. That's a lovely notion. Another way of saying that, and of course this is why I wanted to do that meditation together, is energy always follows thought. Energy is a great abundance, and it's just looking for a thought to follow. And the particular thoughts that it really loves to follow are those of imagination, because imagination has desire in it. Imagination has feeling in it. Imagination has intensity and intent. Expectation is thought that's amplified very often by simply our desires. What do I want? Amazing thing. And forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but you know, there's something very useful about the future. I know that our only point of power is the present, but we also have a future. We can't ignore that there is a future out there. And I think the powerful thing about the future is that it's a vast array of probable outcomes. Infinite array of possibilities, probabilities. And of course, the ones that we concentrate upon, the ones into which we project our consciousness, those, the framework starts getting built. Those, energy and spirit starts forming into matter, into form. That in and of itself seems to be an unbelievable expression of how powerful we are. You mean I just have to cast my consciousness into the future, look at what I want, focus on it, imagine it happening. If you want to really give it some juice, imagine it happening in motion. Don't just imagine a static picture. See the woman you want to have fall in love with you. See her dancing as she falls in love with you, or whatever. See the beautiful house that you want to create. See it being built. See action as you're touching that desire, and you magnify it. But it makes the place, where I put my consciousness so important to. I don't know about you, but I get scared sometimes. Oh my God, I might be having a cranky day, and just, hope that guy that cut me off on the highway just, runs off the road. Oh no. Can I be trusted with that kind of power? And I don't know about you, but that triggers some fear in me on certain days. When I was, I guess about 12 years old, I grew up in a large family in Colorado, and we lived out in the country. And I was in charge. I was second oldest of a clan of 8 children, 6 of whom were sisters. So I got certain duties, like the garbage. And we had an incinerator bin out back behind the barn, and this was surrounded by thousands of acres of grazing land with a forest off in the distance, and about a half a mile away was the highway. And I was having one of my cranky days, feeling like nobody loved me, and if they really respected me, they wouldn't be. Somebody else would have taken out the garbage. How's that for a thought? And the job was to pour the stuff in the incinerator and, burn the stuff that would burn. So about the time I lit the match, the wind came up. And I lit the match, and I was not even paying attention to what was going on, because the wind came up and a large bundle of just compacted newspaper, the wind caught it, and it went sailing away, burning through the sky. And I chased after it, trying to put it, and the wind caught it, and that whole thousands was up in flames. So I raced back into the house and called the county fire department and called the neighbors, and in probably 15 minutes there were dozens, if not hundreds, of people fighting that fire. I was feeling completely powerless, but more than that, I was feeling huge shame and guilt about, look what I just created. Oh my God. The good news was, the wind was blowing. People arrayed themselves in front of the forest, so we protected the trees, and the grazeland just burned all the way to the highway. That was all we could have. So it was left with this black environment. My parents had been gone. The next day they came home, and I could just imagine what that looked like, turning the corner and seeing, whoa. I carried around that failure, that mistake. Felt horrible. It was interesting, though. I didn't know what to do with it other than, well, I guess I'm a failure. I'm horrible, unlovable, all the rest of what I interpret my guilt, my feelings of guilt to mean. This is what I did with it. And then the next year, I heard from the rancher who used this grazing land that the insurance company had paid him off for the loss of the fence posts, for the loss of grazing, and he'd made money on the fire. Oh! And then, 6 months later, he comes back and tells me, and not only that, but this part that you burned, it's grown up so much more vibrantly after the fire that I'm getting a lot more grazing out of this field than I used to. You mean there was a contribution that happened out of this thing? I couldn't believe it. Whoa. And it's a very interesting thing because often when I'm creating expectations for what I want, I stop myself right in the middle because I can imagine the failure that could accompany this. And I can imagine that time where I burned down the field and there was such disappointment in myself. And the fact that, one, I'd lit the match. Two, I couldn't chase down this burning newspaper flying through the air fast enough to prevent this conflagration. That huge disappointment in myself. And for years I listened to that notion, the way to deal with that pain of disappointment is just abandon my expectations. Don't have them. Don't want something for the future, and I've solved the problem of disappointment. Anybody else arrive at that conclusion? That we've all tried that one. Disappointment. Okay. So I've been here often enough, so I want to just make sure, raise your hand if you have any objection to me reading from a poem I wrote. Some people just think poetry. You have to do it now, because, okay, that's it, you had your chance. There it is. This one's called Wile E. Coyote. Of all of life's messengers, disappointment is the most wily. We fear it like a scavenger, ripping and tearing at our dreams as if to say, how dare you dream a dream that life or some other shade has deemed you neither capable nor worthy to imagine. And so we go about living as though our meager comforts are reward enough for this journey, picking at the scraps falling from the table of life, finding solace in only those crumbs of imagination that whimper in the shadows of our distractions. But if you would make a study of true joy, enroll in those classes taught by disappointment. A timeless scholar, whiskered with hooded brow, some days rapping knuckles, eyes flashing, as our dreams lay eviscerated in the dust. We believed the fallen body to be ourselves, undeserving, rather than a mere rag doll of imagination that stops here for a moment on its way to a more fulfilling destination. And on brighter days, he licks his chops and gently reminds us that our visions fulfilled are not loads from which to mine our happiness, but veins of wealth to be shared. Veins of wealth to be shared. We forget that not only are those probable realities out there in our future. But they're really all around us. And that every event that we create, every part of our lives, has not only the successful probabilities, but the failure probabilities. And they're part of the same event. And while we may bring here a success and be very pleased with it and happy about it and enriched by it, well, in some other probability, that failure of that outcome exists as well. And we're not experiencing it physically, but it's part of that greater event. And the interesting thing is that every failure has a gift to give to that success that we create. And every success has a gift to give to that failure we create. We're creating both sides of it and only usually experiencing one in this realm. But in the spirit realm, all possibilities are there. And they all have something to give to that growth of consciousness that we are pursuing, individually and collectively. And if we can remember that, then it seems, at least in my own experience, I notice that, well, the failures that I experience in my day-to-day living, and they're there, just like the successes, they are very useful. They're very rich. If I can just give up the notion, oh, it shouldn't have turned out that way. Oh, I shouldn't have lit the match. And yet then I wouldn't have had the experience of hearing the rancher say, yeah, I got paid off and the grazing's better. So, he stopped short of saying, hey, would you do it again? Which I was very happy not to hear. No, thank you. But we don't have to worry about, oh, well, if I heal my disappointment rather than try to avoid it, if I get its message rather than try to refrain from my dreams, from my expectations, if I can heal that disappointment, then I'm no longer trying to manage it. And it lets me discover how even this failure I'm having in this moment is useful in my life and the lives of people around me. And I stop going out to the people that I care about and saying, oh, I had this huge failure and I want you to really give me a lot of sympathy. Okay, would that work? And sometimes we say, well, I'll express my caring by pitying you. Well, that doesn't really, it's not really an expression of I see you as a powerful being. Pitying you is not really an expression of I acknowledge and recognize that unlimited being you are, that individualized expression of God that you are. And you obviously put this failure in your life because it will contribute not only to yours, but to mine and to all of ours. Because that is the grace of God in which we live. I like this business of healing disappointment. It's always interesting when I give myself permission, and I'm in the middle of a failure and feeling disappointment. It's interesting to give myself permission and say, well, how do I know I'm feeling disappointment? Well, it's got to be somewhere in my body because that's the only location I've got nerve endings. And when I go there and breathe into it, it's always very interesting to hear the message. It's always very interesting to realize I am being guided at that moment by a higher power, by that God within. And often disappointment is telling me, well, but what do you really want, Ned? What is it you really want? Did I want the fire not to happen? Or did I really want to know that there's a connection beneath that kind of trauma that unites us all? And the rancher who grazed that land gave me that gift. Whoa. So I encourage you, when you're facing a failure, that you make a commitment. And as a matter of fact, you could make this commitment in front of the entire universe, and you'll get support. Make a commitment that regardless of whatever mistake or failing you may be walking through, whatever loss or trauma you may be experiencing, make a commitment that you will trust yourself to refuse to withhold love from you. In the middle of any failure, in the middle of any mistake, commit to refraining from ever withholding love from yourself. You'll find that very helpful. And I think disappointment's very often wanting us to learn that. Because you see, disappointment understands one thing very crucial. God Him Herself could show up on your doorstep tomorrow morning, knock on your door, open the door and say, I am here to tell you of your magnificence, of your individual beauty, of how rare you are and how much being you contributes to the collective well-being. God Him Herself could tell you this tomorrow morning. But if you say, well, thanks, but, I had this thing when I was 12, and the fire and the thing and the burn, and I'm really, not all that you think I am. It won't be what God had to say to you that manifests in your life. It will be what you say to you. That's what shows up in your life. You are the supreme authority. And I'd ask that we celebrate that. Remember, I refuse to allow myself to withhold love from me, regardless of the failure, regardless of the trauma, regardless of the mistake. And then they get to be fun. And then you start to discover that you are such a being of good intent that you will always seek to pursue that expression. You will always seek to pursue your constructive intentions and your expressions. And you don't need to worry about, are you going to become an arsonist? Because God trusts you. God knows of your good intent. And every mistake adds to all of us in a constructive way.